Why, hello there, and welcome to the Innovantage Podcast, where business meets tech to bring you a competitive edge. I'm your host, Max, and today we're still talking about AI, its influences on our society, and different lenses that we're looking at it through. And today's lens is one that is very close to home, one that is very much localized in Vilnius and in Lithuania. Because my guest here today is Dr. Linas Petkevičius, who is the general manager for the association, the AI Association of Lithuania, and an associate professor at Vilnius University, with a very much heavy focus on AI, deep learning, and other technologies connected to it. So, Linas, hi.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Really nice to meet you and be here.
Thank you very much. So tell us a little bit about what it is that you do in the Association of Lithuania and in Vilnius University and in other associations that you are a part of or in other companies that you are a member of.
So really, I would really happy and glad to talk about the Artificial Intelligence Association in Lithuania. And while in Lithuania, we are quite a small country, but we do have really a large umbrella, which combines everything, the academia, the companies, the startups, the professionals, the enthusiasts under one umbrella, which allows to follow the news, knowing what's happening, which new technologies are developed in Lithuania, if there's some inquiries about what is happening in Lithuania, which are main topics that the companies are doing, what are the strengths. So we do know everything what's happening in the ecosystem, and we want to engage a lot of people. We're doing a lot of meetups, various hackathons, yearly award events, and for that reason we focus that, we really want to have strong AI ecosystem in Lithuania. And we do believe that if we have really good core, really good ecosystem, then a lot of new startups will start to pop up, new ideas will be generated, and we will have really interesting breakthroughs within the near future. And this is quite a new time for me. I'm a president for the AI Association just for 1 month now. But nevertheless, we aim to have really new ideas to starting to be happening in the association. We're starting to do various engagement events to visit the association companies, and we really truly believe that it will have a really good impact in the whole ecosystem. So this is the main the topic for the what is happening outside the main activities, because I am also the associate professor at Vilnius University, and within the Faculty of Mathematics and Informatics, obviously as a researcher, as a lecturer, you need to teach the lectures like deep learning courses, also supervising students who are writing their bachelor's math thesis in various applications of deep learning. So for that reason, there's also huge academic activities, but also the NGO-related activities as well for me.
So how do you balance that? Like, that seems like two broad topics, that require a lot of involvement. On the one hand, the Association of Lithuania, seems like a very popular thing nowadays, right? And then on the other hand, the whole academic activity that requires rigorous focus. How do you manage a balance between the two? And maybe the two are connected in more ways than I can understand.
Well, obviously, the most common ground is AI.
Of course.
From the research side, you need to follow what is the newest research publications, which are producing new ideas and new techniques. From the NGO and the AI Association, you also need to communicate and bring ecosystem stakeholders together, and through the discussions, through the consultations, you could say that, hey, it's quite clear that at the moment there's breakthrough technologies in 3D reconstruction, and if you are doing this, and there's some interesting young people who are also trying to do some things in that field, maybe it's worth to do that matchmaking and so on. So it's becoming quite easy to do the matchmaking and help for both sides to get more beneficial things.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But let's talk a little bit about how AI is being perceived in the populace today. So I have a feeling that everything AI related has had a very high spike, since like last year, probably. How do you see it in your point of view? Do you see more master students choosing, to focus on AI as their part of their thesis? Or do you maybe see, many more members of the association coming up? What is your point of view?
AI is definitely changing what we touching and seeing each day. But I would like to start from like generic point of view that it seems that for a long time we really had like typical, more or less capitalistic approach that, well, you either have to labor or the capital, and then you could create some business and value. If you have really a lot of labor, you could like have a really large call center, and you would be in advantage. If you have some really good capital, you could create some factories and have advantages in that. And now AI arrived, and now what we do have, there's one programmer who's working on his laptop, and he could replace like thousands of jobs by automation and usage of the AI systems. And it does not fall directly under neither the labor nor the capital, because it's like a really new idea which arrives in our society, and we are not accustomed to that. And while we're seeing that, well, these are those really new approaches, and really nice examples starting from ChatGPT and now ChatGPT 4.0, and really develop the new ideas. It's still new ideas, and it still did not arrived and achieved everyone. So that means we still will see a lot of products which will be built on this new technology and will touch all of us. But to follow up on the question, so definitely, and the really interesting thing is that like 5 years ago, when students selecting, well, I would like to write my bachelor thesis in some deep learning applications, which is AI technology. Well, it was rather tough because, well, some libraries does not work. You need to code a lot. You need to really spend a lot of technical things. And now it's really amazing that it is such a low bar of the entrance that you could say, well, we will try to solve this really not simple task, and you will take this model and combine with this technique, and you will produce some model who will have the predictions. We will analyze those predictions, and from that you are enabled to have the whole process covered in a really short period of time, and it's making a huge advantage. So I would say that if we just compare some even research projects, like for the bachelor thesis, like 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it's definitely raised up the bar because now you could do a lot more in the short period of time.
So is there like sense behind it, or is it just hype? So are the applications really applicable? Are they real in your opinion? Do they, have that real impact? Is, like you said, one programmer able to replace a whole infrastructure using AI tools? Or is it more or less like, maybe someday in the future if we do the right thing and the usual hypey things?
So I would say that, and I will come back to the point that, well, we knowing the AI as a definition in like last year and a half really well. And what's happening basically is that, well, it's for the general public. We are becoming quite accustomed with those technologies. But if we just look at the last 10 years, we had a really spike in the technology breakthroughs in 2015 when various image recognition models were developed and there was breakthroughs. We had the various generative models which have really good success in 2017. We have the language models which were innovative and really started to produce interesting results in 2018. The only problem was that all those technologies and all those breakthroughs were in academia, in the R&D, and it was not at the final product for each of us to touch it. But from the other point of view, we could look that, well, for a long time, like for centuries, usually we had that academia is in front, some fundamental models, fundamental ideas, and then some students or some innovators are looking, well, this idea maybe could be applicable in practice, maybe we'll try to do R&D in company, and within 5 or 10 years, maybe if we're lucky, we'll have some product which touches the customer. And now what's happening in the last 5 years, we do have that, well, if the technology or some new mathematical model for better recognition, for specific suggestions or recommendations coming up, the companies could take this new thing from the academia, implement and in their own pipeline, and have and test within a week. And now the academia and business from like applicational point of view joined in some sense, because nowadays basically majority of the really bigger companies have the AI teams, the machine learning teams, and they following what's happening in academia, because, well, if today among the 100 like new publications will be one which would help our pipeline of the business, we should implement not after 1 year, but maybe implement today and test for the A/B testing for the next week. So from that point of view, we're really seeing that the barrier from the academia and the new ideas to the reaching us as all of the society, it's a really short barrier.
So maybe you have some specific examples of where that barrier is getting much shorter, maybe specific technologies that are...
I would say all of the AI technologies, which starting from the various chatbots through the recognition, and like we using, for example, our smartwatches and various we opening the phone with the fingerprint or the face scan. It's some recognition technologies. And if like some better recognition model will come up in the next week, some company who's or the phone provider will update the model, and we will have even better recognition model without even noticing us that, hey, like last week there was some cool paper in the scientific publication and we tested and it works better, and now we could do the even cooler things.
Okay, so kind of the relationship has monumentally shifted.
I would say yes, definitely.
It's completely different nowadays, at least from your perspective, and that's interesting to hear. It's not the way that we're used to doing things, and well, us as a species. I mean, us as humans, not you and I specifically. And it's interesting where that will go. Do you see maybe any practical applications in your educational sphere that are being implemented right now, or maybe deep learning algorithms that are being used in the day-to-day processes of either the associations or the companies that are part of associations?
So before going that route, I would like to mention that usually what's really interesting that for some technologies it's really needed to be adoption is needed. And what I mean by that, so we could now see a lot of applications and illustrative examples when speech-to-text models starting to produce reasonable good accuracy, and various applications like ChatGPT really is producing good results and speaking out. It could be speech-to-text once again. But nowadays, it's quite uncommon for us to think that, well, if I'm going during the street, why should I talk with my phone and listen for the answer instead of writing on my cell phone? Because we changed our behavior, and now to roll it back and have the various changes, it's really, really difficult as a society. And I would say that it is the same reason for the VR and, for example, the Vision Pro Apple glasses, that, well, it's not some custom that, well, if we have some filming and we will have the ability to monitor information, which is great for the additional information that you would collect in your pipeline, maybe additional notes, maybe you will get some information about the object, but we are not custom for that, and we also need to change that behavior, and technology is here, and we are just not custom for that. And for that reason, I would like to mention that especially it's really interesting breakthroughs and really nice applications when we seeing from the speech application that, well, we, instead of the typing, we could like drive with the car and just talk with our AI assistant and make notes, and everything will be placed in some ordered document, and you do not need to sit near to your laptop and just type and work. You could move around and still work. So it's a lot of technologies it's popping up, but what I would say it will take some time for us to become more adaptable for that.
And how do you see that adaptation going? So should we control it maybe through regulation or through rules, or just being conscious of what we do? Or should we just follow where the wind is blowing and see where it takes us? Just we'll just adopt all the technologies and we'll see how society changes.
Probably the most good thing is just allow and to encourage to do the innovation experimentation, and just allow to have as many as possible new technologies and new products and new services to roll out through startups and the new ideas, because it will allow diversity and options in many cases, because very often when we do have only one or few options as a services, even, for example, like emails, we become custom and we do not want to have changes anymore. But if we're having like a new app every week or twice a week, and we tried it, if it's working, we're starting to use. If it's not working, well, we will search for the better one. We're starting to have really interesting developments that companies wants to improve and have better and better and better products. So for that reason, the changes that we are limiting ourselves are very often based on that we do not have enough innovation which is supported from the ecosystem. So I would say that the most easiest way is just to see that, hey, we really do have really interesting technology, and let's look where various applications could be done and achieved.
And how do we judge which technologies are interesting and which ones aren't? So as a general manager of the association, as the main point of focus for you, I would guess, is that community, right? Engaging with, like you said, startups that are coming out and existing companies that are already members and speakers that are, present at events. So how do you approach this topic? Where do you judge which startups are, interesting enough to promote or, to be a part of the community, or which speakers have the most interesting topics and which ones are, so? What do you look for?
It's really great question. Of course, unless you know the future, you would not be able to guess for 100% which is really breakthrough or not. But from the testing the cases, for example, in the AI Association, we're doing the AI meetups. So usually we try to invite as many new ideas, new speakers to talk about what the startups doing, what some new products or some daily routines are presented in using the AI tools. So the community would have additional information that, hey, it's not only that I'm working in my field and I know some larger companies which working in the AI field, and that's it. So just to have the more and more and as many as possible education for the public. I think it's really important and really helps. And for that reason, we starting to look which kind of the events could be really good for the educating the ecosystem and the whole society.
And do you primarily focus on Lithuanian companies and Lithuanian representatives, or are you looking more towards, international sphere and bringing people to Lithuania to be a part of the association or to speak or to promote ideas?
We actually do both. Of course, since we do have the good umbrella and we do know what's happening in the ecosystem, it helps a lot. If there's an emergency, we could say, hey, maybe you are working in a really interesting field and the community would really like to hear about this application. But we're also looking at various new ideas and especially the talent, which eventually would arrive to Lithuania as well. So actually, what we're seeing that in Lithuania, we're starting to have not only the good ecosystem from the talent point of view, but also really better ecosystem from the investments point of view. We do have some multiple funds for the acceleration, pre-acceleration programs and the investment funds. And we now are starting to see that it's really becoming a really good time to start to invite more and more people to Lithuania from all over the Europe and the various our alumnus who went for studying for abroad and now might reconsider maybe to come back to Lithuania, and has really good environment. So I would say one of the goals of ours is definitely to have some campaigns that would address that, hey, maybe you worked at Google and now it's a good time to come back in Lithuania, start to create your own startup or become some team lead, which will build the good ecosystem under the beneath you.
So you heard it here, folks. If you're abroad and you still haven't come back from Lithuania after Brexit, now's the time to return. There's a lot of interesting things going on at the AI Association and in Vilnius University. So come back and do some interesting stuff back home. But yeah, so moving on to the next question. Let's talk a little bit about other spheres that you're familiar with. If I understand correctly, you do have some knowledge about deep learning applications. So what kind of knowledge do you have and what do you know about deep learning applications? Can you tell us? And what that even is for those people that do not know?
So the deep learning as a topic is quite interesting. So for many times and for even like 10 years ago, we might have an algorithms who try to do various applications like in computer vision, like recognition tasks and so on, from the idea that, well, you could take some pixel information from the frame or from the image, and we could try to classify what kind of the object it is. But or if we would take the illustrative example from the text, if we take some word, maybe we could have the information about what's happening based on that fact. But apparently what's happening is that from that small piece of the information, from that bit of information, it's not feasible to say what is happening, what this object it is from that one pixel, for example. If you do not have the whole picture, whole global information. So if you have the whole sentence, whole paragraph, you could now tell more information about what's happening in the text, what is the mood of the text, what is semantic information, in which context, whether it's a sarcasm or it's a real sentence. The same goes for the images. Maybe it's a blurred image, maybe it's a darker or lighter image. And based on the context, now you could say that, hey, it's a dog or not, but not from the pixels, but from the whole image information. And the deep learning is the modification of the mathematical models, which is basically saying that, well, we will take any kind of the complex information, whether it's images, whether it's a text information, whether it's a speech information. We will do some modifications of the textual data and various aggregations until such point that new information will become much more informative about what's happening in that domain. And all of those, like ChatGPT and various other models, and what they are trying to do is basically trying to incorporate and have the mathematical methods who aggregate the original data, the images, the text, to new dimensions, new features, which now saying, well, in this image, we're seeing those type of objects. In this paragraph, this mentioned some companies' names, and it is in positive sentiment. And all of those models solving like classical statistical problems, like predict some future answer, so most likely statistical words in what you're predicting, or having the prediction where some objects visible in the image. But nevertheless, what we seeing, it is really interesting that mathematical background, that we taking the complex data, we doing the transformation in such way that we encode what's happening in the data. And if we manage to encode into the new features, well, then we have knowledge what's happening in the image. Now we could make conclusions. And it's becoming really valuable for the business, for the applications. If you're having the images, you could have the description that, hey, what kind of the text is in the images. If you have the text, you could generate the image from the text, because you do know what is semantic information encoded in the given complex data.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say is the challenge of actually implementing deep learning into, existing environments, of, doing some tangible value with that sort of data?
Most common thing and most common mislead information, I would say, it is that for the most cases, all of the models are statistical. So that means they do not work 100%. They could work 99.9%, but it's not 100%. So very often when we taking like really large models like ChatGPT models and so on. So what does it mean? So it means that we want to have one model, one mathematical formula for all cases of the world. Of course, it's difficult to achieve that. But if you modify those models to just do one or two or even 100 smaller tasks, it could manage to do very well if you have the domain of the data. So, for example, if you do have your own textual data, all of the documentation, various chats with your customers, all of the databases, so you could collect and modify the models, that those models working really, really well on all of the historical data that you already aggregated. But for that reason, you need to modify the models, or in the general terms, the fine-tuning models. So that means that when you do that, you need to do various experimentations. I would say it's in general impossible to create really excellent model for your business cases or even academic application from the first trial. And in many cases, when you really looking for the excellence, it might be a case that your experimentation team or your researcher will create like 200 models. He will try like 200 experiments, and eventually from 200 experiments, there will be one which have really good model, which is suitable for the production. So this contrast that, for example, when you are looking from the IT perspective, very often, well, there's a website, we need to develop the website. So it's a checklist, and you have some functionality, and that's it. And from the applications of the deep learning and various AI technologies, there's that small, sometimes large uncertainty gap that you do not know exactly that within a month I will be able to produce the final product. Maybe it will take 1 week, maybe it will take 2 months, because sometimes the experimentation and creation of those models are really challenging, and it's requiring more transformation of the data to figuring out how to clean and take really important data and so on. So from that reason, I would say the most uncommon thing from the IT perspective is that it's not so easy to implement from day one, because you need to do some experimentation.
And I'm guessing academia is a nice place where those kinds of approaches can take place, because, in a corporate setting, the main question is, okay, where's the profit? I don't care that you need to have 10 approaches to fine-tuning a deep learning algorithm. I need to understand how we're going to sell this ChatGPT wrapper to the investors, and we have 2 weeks to do that, because in 2 weeks somebody else would already have done it. And in academia, you can actually, gain the intangible value, non-monetary value from any approach. If you're working on a thesis, the thesis needs to come together. It's not about making money from whatever else it is you're doing. And maybe do you see that little bit of corporate corruption, as we've spoken in the beginning, where, that a lot of the things are coming from the corporate world into the academia? Do you see that kind of mindset plaguing, younger generations or people working on their theses right now? Or are they managing to find the balance, to take a step back, do the research, spend the time, actually, fine-tune the models enough times for them to produce not just adequate results, but actually the best results for the use case?
Well, there's a twofold, I would say, from really younger students, like bachelors. There's a lot of topics and interest. Just let's do some application, because you could touch it, you could see the final result. You will create some speech recognition or textual model or image recognition model, and you see the results, and they are really nice. But they are not reproducing the fundamental new knowledge. And the invitation to have more and more those students to say to live and to have just topics, fundamental topics, and do not have the disruption that, hey, I just want to see the result. It's really challenging, because in academia there's good and bad things. So the good thing is you're following all of the news, what's happening, which models are working, which are not working. So last week was introduced a mathematical model who proposed some regularization technique, and it's really helped with the generalization of your model and so on. So you need to track all of the new things. On the other hand, from the experimentation point of view, it's sometimes depressing, because you try to a lot of things, and you try to improve some state-of-the-art model. It's really challenging, because you need to provide some results which are better than really best models which are currently working on those domains. But nevertheless, if you still have the inner power to continue to research and experimentation with various new models, various new techniques, eventually some new combinations lead to really good results, and it's really satisfying. But definitely, once again, the experimentation and the failures, it's not visible. Usually we see only the final good results, but it usually takes a lot of effort. And for especially the masters and PhD students, it's taking a toll. I would say definitely that, you're trying something, it's not working, and then at some time it starts to be working, and then the results, you're seeing results are good. Bump of motivation, and you could go forward.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice to hear that, quick results haven't replaced the best results just yet. People still are able to focus, especially in an academic setting. That brings a lot of hope for the next generations and for the next type of professional that is going to come out of universities. And I don't have kids myself. I don't have kids myself, but I heard from friends that the younger generations, the real younger generations, people that are just children that are just starting out school, that we grew up thinking that there's no point in doing computer literacy classes anymore because everybody works with computers nowadays. So what's the point? But the younger generations actually don't really use computers. They use phones. They use tablets. So everything is an app for them. So they don't really know the distinction between what is a browser or what is Facebook or what is Instagram or what is Twitter or what is whatever else. And when you ask them to go on a computer and type something, they're like, what? How do I use a keyboard? I'm used to swiping and I'm used to everything being touch controlled. And what the hell is a mouse? How do I use a mouse? And what I've heard at least is that computer literacy needs to make a comeback for the younger generations to be more in tune with the technology that they're using because they're losing that distinction, that touch of what that really is. But I'm guessing you haven't seen it yet in students, I hope.
I could give a really small example that various IT students and various programmers really working with the keyboard and programming all the time. But you could imagine that when you're looking for the information and you're programming or you're near your laptop or PC, what you're doing usually? You're going for the Google to type some information. And what is really interesting that when this first semester and the young bachelor students are arriving, you might see that in the practice, in the classes, there's that trend that, hey, you could search for that specific structure documentation in some page. And what the students do, they taking their hands from the keyboard, taking the phone and starting the Googling with the structure in the documentation page. You do have everything in front of you, but the habit is already here. So there's definitely a small shift of the behavior, and we're starting to see that. Of course, we managed to fix it, and it's become uninhabitable in a quite quick way, but nevertheless, the changes in behavior is visible.
Oh, yeah, and I'm guessing with AI being the next step, like you don't even need to type anything. Everything will be just, voice control, considering the fact that voice-to-speech is already very functional and, assistants like Google or Siri or whatever are also very commonplace. So the next step is like, why do I need to use my fingers at all? Just ask my phone and it tells me back whatever it is that I need to do. And then teaching those people how to use a computer, they're like, oh my God, why? Why do I need to use hands, two different ones for two different tasks? That's so outdated. That's going to be interesting to see. I'm definitely going to feel old when I see that. Well, yeah. So maybe let's talk a little bit about other applications. Maybe healthcare. Maybe you have some insights to share how AI is being used in healthcare, and maybe some potential applications for AI in healthcare that you follow yourself.
So the healthcare is really interesting topic because, for a long time, and we could manage to split to multiple categories. We had the doctors and the experts, which did the consultations and were trained for identify some diseases or some really difficult cases. And what we're seeing in not all, but some specific domains, that many tasks are really good for the automatization. Like, for example, if you have some scans, whether it's CT or X-ray scans, matter in fact, you could actually have the algorithm who's do the scanning of the image and allow us to say that, hey, there's some risk in this region, there's some anomaly which should not be happening here. And it's happening in few milliseconds. And it does not take 10 minutes for the radiologist to review everything. So from that, you at least having the benefit that in really shorter time, you will have the recommendation presented. Hey, even for the radiologist, that hey, what we're seeing from the algorithm, it is visible here, here, and here. If there is no anomalies, so everything seems nice, and you could shorten the time of reviewing everything. So it's really helpful. But nevertheless, we just take more complicated domains like various cancer recognition and various tissue recognition. Everything at the end of the day ends up that the data is and amount of the data really important. At least what we're seeing, and from the rather small size of the country, we're seeing that you could create really interesting some preliminary mathematical models for even recognition or identifying some survival of the patient based on some pathology image. But for the large validation, you need much more data, and for improving the results, you need more and more data. And the bigger labs, whether it's some really large hospital in London or in some United States city, they could just take 100x of the data because they had 100x of the patients per year, and create better model in comparison to like really small hospitals which have like 100x less patients per year. So there's a lot of limitations from that point of view, obviously. But nevertheless, there's one factor which we could mention, that now in the Europe we will have the AI Act.
Oh, yeah.
And that AI Act will say that, well, some applications are not touching us as a society, so yeah, there would not be any regulation. There's some applications that should be forbidden in the society, and some applications like which would have the possibility to impact us, or after the implication we could get hurt or something. So it would be in the high risk, and it should be regulated, and additional testing should be done. So of course, all of the recommendations from the health sector would be in the high risk definition. So that means that a lot of additional burden for the additional testing and additional bureaucracy will be on the startups, on the companies who's doing the research in the health sector. Yeah. But nevertheless, I would say it's still a lot of cases where the models and the recommendation systems would be beneficial in the healthcare sector.
Do you see maybe any specific downsides where the models will make the healthcare sector worse? Because I feel like Europe has a very specific problem. Not all of Europe has the same problem, but it's it's kind of similar, where there's not enough doctors and the waiting times are too long and getting to a specialist is too hard. I don't feel like we have that problem too much in Lithuania, but other countries definitely struggle with it.
One factor which is not mentioned, but once again, maybe AI will solve it in different manner. It is the human touch for say. Very often, it's not necessary just to have the final decision. Here, this your symptoms, and from that symptoms, you should take 2 pills of those. But very often, it is also the doctor as a person who influence and telling you, you're fine. It's a mild symptoms. When you will take the 2 pills, you will be better, and don't worry, and your health will be better next week. So I would say that one of the things which we also somehow would need to solve in the future is also that, so let's call it a human touch, because it's not direct and not written somewhere, but it is really helping in many cases, because you could solve the many statistical cases that if you have like 100 patients per year on the specific symptoms, many cases could be automated. But for those good recoveries, those cases also necessary.
But conversational AIs are, already good at conversations. So your standard ChatGPT has a very good bedside manner, so to speak, right? The ones that doctors have. And they are patient, and they are theoretically impartial, and they can, again, theoretically, keep their composure, talking to old people about Alzheimer's symptoms, for example. You don't get frustrated explaining the same thing over and over and over again because you're an AI. You don't really care. Or, over-explaining some things where the doctor, for example, does not have the time to go into the details of what a cold, sore throat is. Like, Google it. I don't have the time. I have people who are sick. For an AI, here's an article, you can read it, and here's a summary of that article, and so on and so forth. So I feel like that's already kind of a benefit. The only problem being is, of course, AIs sometimes hallucinate, and they can tell you things that are not true. And when it comes to healthcare, that can lead to, disastrous results if people start just believing AI without double-checking with the doctors. So I feel like, I agree. That human touch is still needed, even though some might think that, AIs do conversation great already. Yes, but not factual conversations. I wouldn't trust my health to ChatGPT, at least not yet. Not yet. And you mentioned the AI Act. So how do you feel? Is that a net positive for Europe or a net negative going further down the line? Actually, it's not implemented yet, and we haven't had the chance to see the results of it yet. But Europe is leading the charge here. Europe has the legislation almost already in place. Like the US definitely isn't going to catch up anytime soon. What are your thoughts? Is it a good thing, a bad thing, somewhere in the middle?
This saying that the devil is in the details. So, in general, the idea of having the regulation of some applications, that some things are not in our best interest of the society, it is a good thing. To say that some type of applications should be monitored is also maybe a good thing. But if we do not have the clear vision how it should be implemented, how it should be tested, how it should be certified, it raises really huge uncertainty. And when we do see the current race in the AI, that the biggest companies, the OpenAI, the Meta, the various companies and open source models are starting to improve the models each day to have the better and better and better results. And we're starting to see that, hey, we actually do not have any really large level AI companies in Europe. We do have some language companies like Mistral and Aleph Alpha, which are doing the language models, but they are, I would say, 1B tier. It's not 1A tier. And it's not so much of the European companies already. And if you have additional burden of you need to also do the additional testing, and it will be regulated and so on. So you definitely in the race, you could say that you might have the disadvantage. So we will see how it will be implemented. Maybe it would not be really harsh one, and we will wait for the final bad cases to pop up, or there will be some discussions how to improve your models and how to prepare them safely. So we will see how the implementation will goes, because before that we do not know what the impact will be. But from the society point of view, it's definitely good to have those safeguards, that we will say that, hey, There's some applications which we do not want. There's some applications that we tolerate, and some applications it does not need to be tested because it's not impacting us directly. So I would say that let's wait and see. But there's a lot of risk that it will be the disadvantage for the Europe.
That's an interesting point of view. I never thought of it that way. Like, yeah, we are in a race constantly, and especially if we're talking about startups and companies and whatever else, capital gains are, very much dependent on timing.
I just mentioned that. Just look at the Apple. They saw that, well, this race, this really good OpenAI models, this Meta open source models, to start to create the models nowadays from scratch, it's really risky. It's really capital intensive, and you might be way, way behind already if you just starting to think that you will start to create next year. The technologies will change in 1 year dramatically. So definitely this that push for the improvements are good, but from the competitive advantage point of view, a lot of burdens of additional regulations, it's not helping.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. It's very hard to find a balance, I guess, Giving all the power to companies to do as they will, not the best. But at the same time, stagnating progress and being behind on the times in terms of infrastructure and everything else, also not the best. And we talked about healthcare and that being one of the obvious things to regulate because there are real dangers to people's health if technologies are misused. But at the same time, for those of our viewers who do not know, Lithuania is very much digitized. Everything is digital, much more than many countries in Europe and outside of Europe definitely as well. So like the drug receipts are online, the results of scans are online, you can choose your doctor online and you give an appointment online. So basically the only thing you have to do offline is just go there and receive some medication. And again, even for medication, you can just go to an online pharmacy and just make an order, and the kind of the recommendation of the doctor will also be online, and everything will be connected, and everything will see. So it's efficient. It works. It's great as a user, at least. Me being sick, I know what I need to do, what kind of doctor I will go to, and what kind of prescriptions he will give me, and how I can file those prescriptions, and so on and so on and so forth. But if regulations were put in place, like you cannot have personal data on the internet. You can only store it in in old files, and that's it. It would have been much less convenient, and the rest of the world would have been ahead. And now we are ahead in that regard, and it's very nice. And I feel like that's a net positive for society. But to predict how it will be from this point to the future, it's a hard thing to do.
One thing which could be mentioned, the open source community is really helping with that race and with all of the recent advantages. And if we just look at all of the 10 years, recent 10 years, we would see that all of the booms actually come off from the open source community. In academia or even in some researches in the companies. They publish their work that, hey, this our new findings. And by the way, here's a code you could reproduce and test it yourself. And some researcher looking, hey, I'm solving my own problem, and this code, I could reuse it, and I could combine and merge and create some new things, and I will publish, and it will be reproducible. So that means you have the cycle that all of the new innovations popping up really quickly because you could reuse some information which is open source. And it helped really dramatically. And we're seeing that also from really large language models, whether it's various models, open sourced models. You could download, you could modify the models, you could do the experimentation with it. It helps a lot. It brings a lot of trust into the system and ecosystem. Mm-hmm. The same could be applied even in the healthcare, that if you're creating the open source models, You have the trust. You could do the definite testing on your own data. You could look whether it's working or not, what biases, whether it's introducing or not introducing. But open sourced community also open sourcing the code and very often the data. And there's a problem with the GDPR and the regulation that in some sense, you do not want to have that data which would be public, especially like sensitive data, healthcare data, and so on. Even though that approach would be the better for the society because you would have the transparency of like models and you could have the community for the testing, whether it's working or not. But on the other hand, it's not feasible to implement because of the safety requirements.
That's a very interesting example. Thank you for sharing it. Yeah, it's food for thought. Food for thought at the end of the day. Unfortunately, we do not have the answers. Fortunately, at least not yet. And I guess nobody does really have the answers. And people that say that they do probably also don't. But with the tempo of how it all advances, with the speed, we will find out soon enough, I hope. And I have trust, at least, in the regulatory body to find a balance, at least for now. One more topic I wanted to touch on was the urban planning. So, again, for Europe, it's a very interesting topic to discuss because European cities have always existed in this constant change state. They have existed for a while, and the idea of keeping your history and advancing at the same time is a very important one. So you don't want to get rid of the whole history, but you need to keep advancing, and there's limited space for a lot of cities in Europe to do that. And Vilnius specifically, again, for those people who have never been here, is a very nice city that finds a balance between nature, the old stuff, the Soviet heritage, and the new stuff. So at least in my opinion, there's a lot of balance going on. What do you feel about AI's impact on urban planning? So maybe AI will decide that everything should be very much efficient and we will just follow how they see it, or what's the application here?
I would say it's excellent and not harmful in many cases application where Gen AI would be really helpful. You could imagine that instead of like a city planner, now any municipality, small municipality, like a coordinator could take some tool, some Gen AI tool, and have like 100 possible demos how we could reconstruct the small kindergarten park to new one, and you could select and modify whether it's a park, whether it's a new buildings or area of new buildings. Let's arrange the buildings in such order that it would be really interesting seeing from the hill above or many things. So all of the Gen AI applications from that point of view enables really quick selection and quick opportunities to revise all of the cases. I would say that we will see a lot of imaginations which was not enabled because, well, maybe you need to have a lot of like architect ideas revised, and now you could do just write that. Even for your own like garden, if you have the house, how to reconstruct the area and so on, you could just go to the multiple apps which allow to do the reconstruction of the environment, where to place some tree in which corner, how you could revise the environment and so on. So I would say, especially for the urban updates, it will be really nice to see how the Gen AI will generate new ideas, and I'm really feeling optimistic about that application.
Oh, that's cool. That's I hope so too, because I really don't know much about urban planning and the impact that AI can have on it. But hearing you speak about it, it gives me a little bit sense of, it would be interesting to see how an AI would approach a redesign of like a garden or, an old Soviet building. Like, what can you do with it? Of course, again, in Vilnius, we have our ways of doing it and reconstructing it and updating it, but maybe we could do more, or maybe we could approach zoning a little bit differently, or a lot of other applications that are not as, they are still impactful, but they are not as impactful as healthcare. And like you said, it's a nice place for experimentation for a lot of those models. So yeah, not very, very, very tangible, right? Not theoretical at all. That's specifically addressing the cities that we live in and the places that people walk through and drive through and work in. So yeah, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts on Gen AI and sharing a little bit on your experiences of what you've done and what you're working on. I wish you all the best. I will follow the continuous development of the AI Association of Lithuania further, and I will definitely promote it when I'm up abroad and telling about what Lithuania is, because usually when I travel, they're like, Lithuania, what, where is that? I'm like, okay, so Vinted, and they're like, yes, Vinted, I know that, and they're like, NordVPN, okay. So maybe I will have a third company, something with AI, thanks to your efforts and to your community. And thank you all for joining us today, as well as we've talked about AI and as we've explored its aspects. If you want to hear us talk more, feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, either below or on the side or anywhere else, depending on the platform that you're watching us on. If you want to hear any specific topic for us to talk about, also do the same and let us know what you want us to talk about. Other than that, thank you for joining. Join us next time as we explore that very thin line between business and tech and see whether or not we could find the edge that will suit you. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.